So it is my pleasure and honor this night to welcome Professor Agarwal, the President of American Society of Nephrology. And before I am proceeding, I have the honor this night to have all these VIP nephrologists in Egypt, Arab, Africa, and the United States. And I'd like to leave the mic to Professor, the moderators. We have Professor Mohamed Hany Hafez, the President of Egyptian Society of Nephrology and Transplantation, and Professor Maya Hasaballa, President-elect. Professor Hany, welcome speech.
Good evening, it's a great honor and pleasure to have with us today one of the greatest figure of nephrology in the world. Professor Anupam Agarwal gave us this opportunity to be our host in the Egyptian Society of Nephrology. And I think this meeting will be seen by not only nephrologists in Egypt, but all over the Arab world, Africa and the Middle East. And it will have a strong impact on our practice. And also it will be a start of cooperation with the American Society of Nephrology. And also it's a great honor to have Dr. Maya Hasaballa as co-chair with me. And I give the mic for Dr. Hussein sheashaa to give the CV of our great professor.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohamed Hany Hafez. And thanks, Professor May, for joining this meeting as moderators and chairpersons. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you for this unusual night, because we have with us today, this night, we are saying night because in Egypt we are now night, but I know it is in the day within the United States. So today to have Professor Agarwal, the current president of the American Society of Nephrology, it is a real pleasure and honor for us because we follow the achievement of the American Society of Nephrology. If I go through the affiliation history of Professor Agarwal, and this is from the Scopus, you'll find here very prestigious centers and universities that Professor Agarwal worked in. If all of them are in the United States, and there is a university in Tokyo in Japan. So the Professor Agarwal has fantastic affiliation history, and he was the dean of the School of Medicine in the Alabama, and then he preferred to be the vice dean for research. And so this is why he is now the director division of nephrology and the executive vice dean, School of Medicine at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, program director of the National Institute of Diabetes, Digestive and Kidney Disease, funded O'Brien Center for Acute Kidney Injury Research, and this is the area of his excellence and research preference. Dr. Agarwal has an active role in clinical medicine, teaching, research, and administration, so he's a multidisciplinary personality. Dr. Agarwal has been a recipient of outstanding teaching awards from the Department of Medicine at the University of Florida, as well as University of Alabama. He has been recognized by the Max Cooper Award for Excellence in Research, Thomas and Rowley Professorship in Nephrology, election to membership in the American Society of Clinical Investigation, American Clinical and Climatological Association, Association of American Physicians, the Mary Inwood Chair in Nephrology Leadership, a Dean's Excellence Award for Leadership, and Graduate Dean's Excellence in Mentorship Award at University of Alabama. He is the recipient of the University of Alabama National Alumni Society Honorary Alums Award, and a laureate recipient for the Alabama chapter of the American College of Physicians, a lot of prestigious positions. When I reviewed his profile in the Scopus, I found very prestigious research activities. He has 184 Scopus-friendly documents and cited by more than 9,200 citations. He had overall H-index 54, so it is very prestigious value in research. And his area of expertise in research are within the domain of acute kidney injury and especially hemoxygenase, and I'm going to just mention it in a minute, acute kidney injury and others, epigenetics and activities. One of the very interesting articles, although it is experimental work, is this article. This is from Professor Agrawal, publication this year, zinc and vascular calcification. And in this very sophisticated basic research, they prove that zinc inhibits phosphorus and inhibit FG4592 with subsequent manipulation and the modulation of all these pathways to reduce vascular calcification. Fantastic. I would like to thank and appreciate the efforts of my friend, Dr. Ahmed Kamal, who is who has the honor to work under supervision of Professor Agrawal for 2 years during his ISN fellowship. And it was very fruitful working under supervision of great professor, because it ends with this fruitful publications in Journal of American Society of Nephrology, Kidney International, and the Human Molecular Genetics. So this is, I think these 3 articles made a great change in the profile of my colleague, Dr. Ahmed Kamal. Since 10 years, 2010, we have Professor Jose Bonventry visited our center here in Mansoura, Urology and Nephrology Center, when he delivered a very interesting talk about the renal replacement therapy from the American perspectives, because at that time, Professor Bonventry was president-elect of American Society of Nephrology. And we knew from him the achievements and the shortcomings and the future plan for American Society of Nephrology. I'm sure today, the current face of American Society of Nephrology has been changed completely. I like the vision to not just to encourage treatment of kidney diseases, but to prevent, to treat and cure kidney disease. Fantastic vision. And the same mission leads, ASN leads the fight to prevent, treat, and cure kidney diseases throughout the world by educating health professionals and scientists, advancing research and innovation, communicating new knowledge, and advancing advocating for the highest quality care for patients. Fantastic goals and missions. And I think, I hope, and the world hopes, that a world can live without kidney disease. Even at that time, we can work as internal medicine physician. It doesn't matter, but it will be fantastic to prevent kidney disease, because I think our goal is to prevent rather than to treat disease. I'd like to stop here to avoid this long introduction, but I think Professor Agrawal deserves more than this. Thank you very much, Professor Agrawal, for this opportunity for us. And as Professor Mohamed Hany Hafez mentioned, we have the gathering from Egypt, Arab world, Middle East societies, African societies, and United States and UK. So I think your speech today will touch all of us, and it will deliver an inspiration messages from one of the highest or on the top of the societies of nephrology. I should like to stop here. And would you please share your slides? And until Professor Agrawal share his slides, Professor Maya Hasaballa can just welcome him in a message. Dr. May.
Professor Agrawal, it's really a great pleasure for us to have you. And I do hope that we do collaborate in the future and continue working together. We really need your inspiration, and we really need your advice about so many things. So we'll be all ears now for you, and then we talk again.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor May. The mic is to you, dear Prof.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be participating in your meeting and share with you some of the activities within ASN. I really want to thank Dr. Ahmed Kamal. We had a great time when he spent 2 years in our research group and was really highly productive. He won an award from the International Society of Nephrology for the work that he did with us. So very proud of what he has accomplished. I have a standing invitation, and at some point after this pandemic is over, I would love to visit Egypt. My kids are really envious that I'm giving this talk right now. And he said, when can we go visit and see the pyramids and the Nile River and so on? So at some point, I know we will be over with this pandemic. As you know, we're going through a really difficult time right now. And we
so
have
I think
yes. We give now this invitation open for you at any time, Professor Agarwal, to be our welcomed host at any time you prefer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that invitation. So I have a brief presentation I'd prepared, but before I do that, I wanted to play this video that I'd like to share. Let me see if I can share the screen here. The Kidney Week last branding video we made. So can you all see the screen?
Yes. Yes, it's clear, yes.
So wanted to remind you all that we have Kidney Week in October. It is going to be a virtual meeting. Hopefully that'll allow more people to participate. The early program is October 19th to the 21st, and the annual meeting will be from the 22nd through the 25th. I want to remind all of you to please register. The meeting will be open through December 3rd. So if you register, you will have access to all the content through December 3rd. We will have free membership and free registration for all trainees. So medical students, fellows, residents, the meeting is free. So please convey, we want younger people to attend our meeting and become excited about kidney research or nephrology as a specialty and pursue this as a career. The world, the number of patients with kidney disease is just increasing exponentially. So we need the younger generation to consider being nephrologists. So please spread the word to your medical schools and elsewhere. So last year, we rebranded the American Society of Nephrology into the American Society of Nephrology's Alliance for Kidney Health. And the main reason for that is shown on this slide. We have multiple areas of expertise that we provide. For example, our main goal, as was just highlighted, is to prevent, treat, and cure kidney diseases throughout the world by educating health professionals and scientists, advancing innovation, communicating knowledge, and also advocating for patients. That's really important, that we listen to our patients and make sure that their needs and what they require, that we meet carefully. We also have a kidney cure, and this is a foundation. And through this, we support research and innovation. We provide about $3 million in grant support for young investigators and fellows every year through a competitive mechanism. We have a kidney health initiative, and this is a partnership between the FDA, the ASN, and over 100 industry partners. And the reason for this is to really help bring innovation to the forefront. We also have NTDS, and this is a partnership with the Center for Disease Control, Nephrologists Transforming Dialysis Safety. So this is looking at all aspects of safety in providing dialysis to patients, whether it is infection, whether it's quality control, and so on. And this group during the COVID pandemic has been really active and have pivoted to a COVID-19 task force, making freely available resources for people throughout the world for COVID-19 and kidney disease. A few years ago, we initiated Kidney X, and that really came out of the Kidney Health Initiative. So Kidney X is a special prize we give out every year, and this is a partnership with the Department of Health and Human Services, the federal government of the United States. So only recently in June, we announced 6 recipients of this prize. And earlier last year, we announced 15 recipients of this prize. So this first initial prize is for developing, redesigning dialysis. So we had 6 recipients most recently. 5 of the 6 recipients are biomedical engineers. So that's a great thing that we can attract people outside of nephrology into our space. So we gave out $3 million this year for the 6 prizes at $500,000 each. So we are really thrilled to partner with other agencies in the federal government, with industry and so on, to make this effort possible. So essentially, how do we decide what is important that ASN should follow? And our main fundamental criteria are shown on this slide. You know, most important, what is best for people with kidney diseases and their families? So the patient perspective is very important for us. What is best for strengthening the relationship between patients and their health professionals? What is the best for our specialty for nephrology? What is best for the kidney community? What is best for the ASN Alliance for Kidney Health? What is our mission, our goal, our vision? What do we have in terms of resources? What is our revenue stream? What is our expense? What is the margin that we can reinvest back? We are a nonprofit organization. So whatever we generate goes back into our, make sure that we have a mission and a vision and our goals aligned to meet the needs of our patients. So what is the current state in 2020? What is happening in nephrology? Really remarkable. You know this number. We developed this number working with the International Society of Nephrology and also the ERA-EDTA. 850 million people worldwide have kidney disease. In the US, 37 million Americans. That's more than 10% of the population. $114 billion is spent in the US to treat kidney diseases. And if you look at ESRD, it's about 36 billion. So 30% of that expenditure is for ESRD. So the numbers are really huge and staggering. If you look at 850 million people worldwide, that is almost over 10% of the world's population of about 7.6, 7.9 billion. So really remarkable scope in terms of the problem we have with kidney disease. How much do federal governments spend for kidney disease research? So this is just in the United States. You can see for HIV/AIDS, $2,500 per patient is spent for research. Cancer, $371. Heart disease, $133. Unfortunately, kidney research, $15 per patient. Even though they spend so much of money on paying for ESRD and for dialysis and other expenses, the money that is put in for research, even though the numbers you can see, heart disease, HIV, cancer, a lot fewer patients compared to 37 million Americans. So we're working very hard with Congress and the federal agencies that fund research to really increase funding for kidney-related research so we can have more innovation in this space. If you look at venture capitalists, you can look at any company, there is not much interest in kidney research. And part of it we blame
Excuse me, dear Prof. Excuse me, do you like?
Yes.
Would you please open the slide in the slideshow?
Yes.
Yes, please. Oh.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So if you look at venture capitalists, you know, cardiology, neurology, orthopedic, surgical specialties, all of them, a lot of interest from venture capitalists. Unfortunately, in nephrology and kidney disease, venture capitalists are only now becoming interested because they recognize the work of various societies and industry, how big the potential is for the market. So they're now looking at coming in, and with all the new drugs, the SGLT2 inhibitors, the endothelin antagonists, and others, that they're now getting excited to coming into the nephrology space. But we need to do better to attract that support from venture capitalists. You know, at least in the US, I don't know how it is in the Egypt, nephrologists are not paid very well, even though they provide 24-hour coverage, emergency call, and they take care of the sickest patients, critical care, multiple complications. We are in the bottom half of specialties compared to all the other specialties. Even in medicine, you know, if you look at hem-onc or cardiology or other specialties, we are paid much lower than these other specialties. So we don't pay people well. Medical students, at least in the US, have huge debt. So they won't be attracted to coming to nephrology if they cannot even make a comfortable salary to pay their bills, even though they work extremely hard, you know, weekend calls and so on. So we have to really change on how we can compensate our nephrologists better. So we think clearly there is reason for nephrology to be optimistic that we will prevail. You know, there's a lot of interest in improving kidney care and kidney health worldwide. If you look at the work that we have done with ISN, ERA, EDTA, and some of the other societies, we've tried to come with better nomenclature in terms of what we should call. You know, we don't use chronic renal failure anymore. We call it chronic kidney disease. So trying to make it more user-friendly terms, so even the lay people can understand the importance, you know, of kidney disease and kidney failure. So trying to shift from end-stage renal disease to end-stage kidney disease. So those are very simple terminology things that we can do to make things better. And a lot of things within ASN that we are doing to raise awareness of acute kidney injury, for example, you know, emergency partnership initiative that we have for people that get into a lot of emergencies, like whether it's an earthquake or a hurricane or things like that, where dialysis services may be disrupted. So we want to make sure we have front center trying to help the public and the community. So last year, you're familiar with this, we had the federal government sign an executive order called Advancing American Kidney Health. So this is the only executive order in 15,000 plus executive orders that is focused on a disease, that is focused on an organ. So this really makes kidney health a huge priority for every American. So the goals of this executive order are really to declare a war on kidney disease. So essentially, the three tenets of this are to try and prevent and delay need for dialysis. So if you have a stage 4 or stage 5 CKD patient, what can you do to delay progression? What can you do to have more home dialysis patients? You know, in the US, only 11% of the patients are on home dialysis. However, in countries like Mexico, Hong Kong, it's 80% is on home dialysis. So clearly there is going to be incentives for more home dialysis. And obviously transplant is the best form of renal replacement therapy. And if you have early referral to transplant, there will be incentive payments through this executive order as well. So we are really excited about this executive order that actually started in 2015 under President Barack Obama. We were fortunate to see that during this current administration, this came to fruition as an executive order and is now being worked out in detail in Congress. So one of the things that we've really achieved or are achieving is to foster innovation through new therapies and research and product development. So some of the things we do is we work with the NIH, which is the largest federal funding agencies, to make sure that they put more money into research. So currently they put about 600 million in research, which as I showed you is not enough. Kidney Cure, which is our foundation, we put in 3 million a year into research grants. Our Kidney Health Initiative has a lot of different programs to develop and foster clinical trials for kidney disease. We actually have 35 clinical trials currently focused on glomerular disease like FSGS, IgA nephropathy, and so on. And I told you about Kidney X, which is the innovation accelerator currently focused on redesigning dialysis, and we hope to expand that further to other kidney conditions. So I'll tell you what all we did for the COVID-19 pandemic, which hit us, at least in the US, in early March, late February. So as soon as this happened, we had existing infrastructure, like I told you, our partnership with CDC, with NTDS, our partnership with the emergency response team, our AKI Now, which is an initiative with Baxter, a policy and quality team, as well as our patient group with Kidney Health Initiative. So we repurposed all these people completely dedicated to COVID-19 response. And they were able to work very rapidly with outpatient dialysis, inpatient hospital, home dialysis, kidney transplant, and making sure scarce resources were available. To give you an example, as ASN president, I was invited to the White House on March 18th, along with 15 other presidents of societies, to share with us our concerns as to how they can help our societies. So we brought up that our dialysis patients are very vulnerable. They sit within 2 feet of each other in a dialysis unit and can be exposed to COVID-19. And there is not enough personal protective equipment for these patients and even the technicians or the nurses. So within the same day, Vice President Pence said, Dr. Agarwal, we recognize how important your dialysis patients are. Administrator Verma, who's the head of CMS, will contact you tonight to make sure we can address these issues. And by next day, they had implemented changes with telemedicine. So we could see patients in dialysis units by telemedicine. So the doctors, nephrologists didn't have to go physically into the unit to see the patients. And this was reimbursable. And telemedicine, at least for us, I don't know how it is in Egypt, has been a savior where patients are worried to come to the hospital or to the clinic, but we can do a televideo visit or a telephone visit and still get reimbursed. So those are some good things, I think, that will stay after this COVID pandemic is done. So some examples are here. Anybody can go to this COVID-19 website that we created. A lot of resources that are available on this website. We've developed a toolkit for nephrology clinicians preparing for a surge. We have a dashboard just showing very important data. And we've also issued recommendations, for example, information on screening and management of COVID-19 for dialysis patients in the outpatient setting, also for caring for patients inpatient in critical care with acute kidney injury. We produced multilingual awareness posters and also provided mental health resources for kidney health professionals. At least in the US, this pandemic has created a big toll in terms of mental health of healthcare professionals as well as patients. It is really difficult. It's not being recognized well enough, but people are very stressed with what is happening in the world today. I'm sure you are facing this in Egypt as well with the pandemic. Several of you have families, kids, and so on. Schools and other things are all disrupted significantly, and that has been a huge burden on the mental health of our colleagues. In terms of education and communication, we've held regular calls with all the chief medical officers of the dialysis units organizations. We've had multiple webinars with not only within the US, but we partnered with, for example, the Indian Society of Nephrology, the Japanese Society of Nephrology, ERA-EDTA, the International Society of Nephrology, to hold joint webinars on COVID response, in the US compared to what the COVID response is in the other countries. So we've really learned a lot, and all those are recorded and available freely to anyone, even a non-member, on our website. We've had a lot of interviews with the media, the New York Times, the Washington Post. We've created a Twitter chat. We've developed recommendation in partnership with other stakeholders like the emergency physicians, the National Kidney Foundation, the Critical Care Society, and we've held a lot of webinars with our Nurses Association. To give you an example, very early on in COVID, the issue about ACE and ARB, ACE inhibitors and ARBs came up. And everybody was like, oh, we need to stop this because the ACE2 enzyme is a receptor for COVID. So if you block it, patients will start getting COVID. So they should stop ACE and ARBs. So two of our nephrologists, Matt Sparks and Dr. Swapnil Hiramat from Canada, actually did a detailed study and posted on Twitter first that no, you should not stop this. And now there are papers in JAMA and New England Journal of Medicine showing that yes, that is true. You should not stop these medications because those are really important for your progressive kidney disease or hypertension or heart disease, that these drugs are life-saving. So you should continue them. They have no impact on COVID infection in patients taking these medications. So this is just a dashboard that we've created. You can see this is actually from August. I haven't updated it to September, but over 45,000 people have visited our website. Over 11,000 people have attended our webinars, downloads, and you can see the data here. I'm happy to make these slides available so you can share it with your membership as well. So we also did a lot of work with policy and advocacy. Congress really wanted to reach out to ASN. Hey, the kidney is being affected in 30 to 40% of patients with COVID. Can you tell us what we need to do? How can we reach patients? How can we reach the dialysis organization? So really ASN was front and center in that regard. We did a virtual Hill Day meeting with all our congressional leaders. We worked with the COVID-19 working group. I mentioned to you about my meeting with the White House on March 18th. We sent letters to the Department of Health and Human Services and FEMA about PPE production, as well as developing the waivers and telemedicine that I just mentioned. And that was a huge win for us to get telemedicine services for our nephrologists. In terms of research, discovery, and innovation with COVID-19, we worked with NIDDK, which is the Kidney Diabetes Digestive Disease Sub-Institute for NIH, to make sure that there would be funding for COVID-19 related research. Nobody knows much about COVID-19 even today, how the pathogenesis of kidney disease and kidney failure occurs. So we need research, in this area. We've also worked with BARDA, and this is part of the Pentagon, to see if there could be novel government funding mechanisms. We've engaged our Kidney X Steering Committee, our KHI, as well as the Artificial Kidney Prize, to make sure that this can be applicable for COVID-19 patients as well. So a lot of work has been done with the COVID-19 pandemic. Something that was unique that came about in about April or so was the issue of systemic racism. And as you know, this has been an issue for decades, for centuries in the US. But with the killing of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, several Black men that were brutally murdered by police for very innocuous crimes that they may have committed, really stirred our country in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic into protests all over the country. And this systemic racism was felt by not only regular people, but also medical students, nephrologists, and physicians, and so on. So we had to pivot to see what we could do in this regard. So we clearly engaged our diversity, inclusion, and equity committee, and they came up with expanding the focus of our medical care. You know, a lot of patients with kidney disease, a highly vulnerable population, is the people of Hispanic origin, Native American origin, or African Americans. They have much higher complications from kidney disease compared to white Americans. So clearly there's a lot of health disparities and relate to social determinants of health. So we wanted to make sure we acknowledged that systemic racism was present and we needed to tackle this issue. So we actually had a webinar 2 weeks ago that was attended by over 500 people to discuss how we can address systemic racism. We issued a statement. We worked with the US Ways and Means Committee to see how we can address the disproportionate impact of COVID-19. And in response, the House Ways and Means Committee asked us to work with them to see how we can help with eliminating the race modification in the eGFR calculation. So we currently have a task force with the National Kidney Foundation to address this race modification for eGFR. So when we do eGFR, there is a race modification that the medical students feel is not appropriate, that is a racist tone to how we practice medicine. And we know that race is more a social construct and it is not a biological construct. So the very fact that this equation included a factor for race needs to be addressed, and ASN through its task force is currently addressing that. Our goal is to have suggestions for alternates if this were to be eliminated. The task force is working really hard and we hope to have some recommendations soon. We've also worked very hard in reevaluating our annual process for identifying nominating leaders for our ASN Council. And I'm really proud to say that 5 of our 8 counselors are women. 2 of them are African American women. So this is the first time ASN at the highest level of its leadership has that level of diversity. So our membership is about 30% or so women, but we have more women on our leadership structure and also women of color. And we have people of different ethnicities. I'm of Indian origin. 2 of our members are Canadian origin. 1 of our counselors is of Irish origin. So we have leaders within ASN of different ethnicities, and that really speaks for diversity, inclusion, and equity within our organization. I mentioned to you about our webinar that we just had last month, and we also had a meeting with our American Board of Internal Medicine on building trust and health equity. So what do we propose as a vision going forward to 2030? So this is where we see ASN as an alliance. You know, we want to deliver excellence in patient care. We want to make sure we promote research, discovery, and innovation. We want to be forefront in educating the next generation and providing timely information. We want to ensure we develop the next generation of leaders and cultural change. We want to impact data science as well as artificial intelligence and so on. We want to be front center in terms of policy and advocacy for issues that concern our patients, and also be strategic in terms of our leadership, our investments, and so on. So as was mentioned earlier in the introduction, our real major goal is to envision a world without kidney diseases. And the proposed vision for the ASN Alliance for Kidney Health is to ignite that innovation that transforms care and improves lives. And to fulfill this vision, this ASN Alliance, we are focused on improving care to drive innovation, educate and inform, and generate policies that result, in a true, meaningful change for our patients. So some of the things that we've considered, in terms of nephrology, I don't know how it is in Egypt, and I would love to hear from you. We have to be more like our cardiology colleagues. Cardiology has multiple subspecialties within cardiology. electrophysiology, interventional cardiology, heart failure, transplant cardiology, adult congenital heart disease. And each of these, the reimbursement structure is different. But nephrology, we just have one reimbursement for general nephrology. So what we're proposing is to have general nephrology, have dialysis care, have interventional nephrology, transplant nephrology, critical care nephrology, onconephrology. So we have these, but the reimbursement is not lined along these different subspecialties within nephrology. So we really want to push for these subspecialties within nephrology. And I think that will have a tremendous impact in enhancing the pipeline of young medical students wanting to do nephrology because they see these options just like in cardiology. So this is just my presentation, and then I'm happy to take any questions and would love to hear your experience in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Agarwal, for this very nice presentation about the ESN perspectives and insight. And I'd like to leave the mic to Professor Hany Hafez to start the comments and to tell you about the ESNT achievements in the last 40 years. I think we are now 40 years. Professor Hany, please unmute yourself, Dr. Hany.
Thank you very much, Professor Agarwal. It was a fantastic journey through the activities of the American Society of Nephrology, and you empowered us by great ideas. The situation in Egypt regarding, I would start by your last slide regarding the subspecialties in nephrology. Actually, since many years, we started to have different chapters in our society dealing with interventional nephrology, dealing with critical care, dealing with metabolic diseases, so dealing with transplantation. So actually we started to involve those who are interested in each of these branches to be gathering themselves together and discussing these issues. And this is already taking place. Regarding also the webinars, especially in the last 6 months, the first 6 months of this 2020, we were very active in having almost every day or every other day maximum a webinar attended each time by more than around 100 participants, discussing different aspects of the COVID and different aspects of the nephrology care during the COVID, including, of course, the issues of ACE and ARBs and other issues of different controversies in the treatment from the time of hydroxychloroquine, passing by the different proposed protocols of treatment, etc. Regarding also the home dialysis in Egypt, actually, we don't have much home dialysis in Egypt, and we are eager to hear your experience, because you are aiming at having in a short time, according to the executive order of the president, around 80% success of your patients going to home dialysis. Actually, in Egypt, we have a problem with peritoneal dialysis. We don't perform much peritoneal dialysis. And I think most of the protocols of home dialysis in Hong Kong and Mexico are more dependent on peritoneal rather than hemodialysis. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'll take your question about the PD. You know, it is possible. So at my institution, we are at 24% in terms of home dialysis, and most of them are on PD. So it is very achievable. 80% in the US may be very difficult, but they put a goal so that we can at least get to 50% or 60% if possible. I mean, if I had end-stage kidney disease, I would like to get a transplant. But while I wait for a transplant, I would like to go on PD. That way I can control my own schedule and so on. So you're absolutely right that that's the case. My question about the subspecialties, is the reimbursement different? You know, we also have the subspecialties here, but the reimbursement is different. It's all the compensation for nephrologists is just as a general nephrologist. Just because you're a transplant nephrologist, the reimbursement from insurance or whatever is not different. So what we are arguing is just like interventional cardiology gets paid at a much higher rate than a general cardiologist. So that is what we're trying to convince the payment folks in the US to change the reimbursement based on subspecialization.
The problem here in Egypt is that we have the salary of most of the practitioner is part from the government or from the academic place and part from their private practice. I mean, it is difficult to tell the exact reimbursement of every subspecialty, but probably the transplant nephrologists are better reimbursed rather than the general nephrologist, for example. That's what I assume from what we see in the practice in Egypt. But but in general, there is no categorization from the government putting, for example, a certain subspecialty with a higher salary than others. We don't have this. Another aspect that I admire you in is the strong collaboration between you and the politicians to overcome the problems, like, for example, when they started to put telemedicine, because actually we are trying, of course, to make cooperation with higher political aspects in Egypt, but we still have some obstacles in implementing what we want to have as nephrologists. For example, in the last maybe 10 years, we are trying to convince the politicians and the society of starting an active cadaveric transplantation program. And we did not reach it to be applicable in spite of having a law. We are not doing this up till now. So I admire very much the very good response of your politicians. Within one day, they started to give you what you want. We are since 10 years trying to convince them with cadaveric transplantation, and we did not succeed up till now.
One of the things that helps in that area is to involve patients. We work very closely with our patient care organizations, and the politicians hear the patients more than the doctors. And if the patients really tell their story, it's very, very heartwarming. And to get results is much more effective. So I'm sure you have patient organizations in Egypt.
Yes,
and that's a strong way to get what
to make
you need.
More pressure. Try to make pressure. Right. I have some questions from the audience for you. The first is from Dr. Gamal Saadi, asking about.
It seems that we lost the Professor Hany Hafez. So the Professor Gamal, you can.
I think you give an answer on therapies, but what about SGL2?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Professor Gamal? Unmute yourself.
Yes, please.
Gamal. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Agarwal, for your presentation, and I was really impressed by the very strong and very effective interaction between the ASN and the community through all its aspects, not only through the political aspect, but also with interacting with the patients, the community, and the pharmaceutical cooperation as well. I would like to ask you about the clinical trials which are considering the use of ARBs and the SGLT2 inhibitors as a therapeutic tool to overcome COVID-19. Not only to continue with them, as you mentioned, or to start them on demand in any patient with COVID, but for their use as therapeutic tools, considering the aspect of co-dimerization of the ACE2 with the AT1 receptor, the docking activity of these agents with the short linear motifs of the spike and the ACE2 receptors, and so on.
Yeah, Dr. Saadi, that's a great question. I am not aware of any study for COVID-19 with SGLT2 inhibitors per se. As you know, the DAPA CKD study was just published in the New England Journal yesterday, has very effective both in diabetic and non-diabetic kidney disease. But I'm not aware if there are any COVID-19 studies with SGLT2 inhibition that I'm aware of. So are you aware of any studies that are being done?
If you allow me.
Yes, there are.
Okay, Dr. Gamal.
There are studies which consider the docking activity of the SGLT2 inhibitor with the short linear motifs of the ACE2 receptor and with the spike receptors as well. And there were very important studies to indicate that the benefit of the SGLT2 inhibitors is mandatory to be conjoined with the use of ARBs. They should not be used alone.
Correct. No, absolutely. I was aware of that, but I wasn't aware of any clinical trials in COVID-19 so far that have been published or that are ongoing.
The clinical trials are now including the ARBs, but there are they did not start already SGLT2 inhibitor clinical trials.
If you allow me, Professor Gamal, because I have a contradictory point here. SGLT2 inhibitors, even if they are from theoretical backgrounds, may be of benefit as treating COVID, but the majority of guidelines came from Nature's and others, putting this class in the bottom of the anti-diabetic drugs, because in COVID, we have a risk for acute kidney injury, for gastrointestinal symptoms and diarrhea. And this class, I think it is one of the worst class, and there is no benefit from the clinical and from the guidelines to use SGLT2 inhibitors in treating COVID patients. They are the best in the kidney disease in general, but they are in the bottom of the list of anti-diabetic drugs if we think of treating diabetic COVID patients. And they should be stopped altogether.
If you allow me.
Yes, they should stop altogether.
If you allow me.
Yes, please, Dr. Gamal. One sentence.
Yes.
There is,
if you would allow me to clarify this point, that we should segregate between COVID patients who are treated as an outpatient and those who are in hospital care, and particularly if they are in severe situation.
This is what I wanted to complete. If the patient is in hospital with moderate to severe disease, I think the majority of oral and diabetic drugs are out of favor. Maybe the DPP4 inhibitors may be, because DPP4 as enzyme may be a pathway for COVID too, and they are tolerated because DPP4 group has less gastrointestinal side effects. But the metformin has 3 mechanisms against COVID, although it is not preferred because of gastrointestinal side effects in the milieu of COVID and of metformin. So
if you allow me to continue this step as well, in case of those who are inpatients, we should also segregate them to those who are critically ill, where in such patients, the only medication allowed is insulin, while those who are intermediate might still be benefiting of the DPP4. And in initial cases, we should not stop the SGLT2 inhibitors as well as not stopping the ARBs. When they are critically ill, you should guard against the dehydration, you should guard against the acidosis or ketoacidosis or lactic acidosis, and you should stop these agents and use only insulin therapy. But I mean, in the general population who are treated as outpatient, you should not stop these agents. And I would like to hear the comment of Professor Agarwal about this.
Yeah, I think, I think we have to individualize this and not generalize it to say, well, everybody should do it, right? It has to be individualistic. In COVID, I think things are still evolving. So I would be worried. I would like to see it be like hydroxychloroquine for COVID, right? It actually ended up causing more harm than being protective in COVID-19, despite, our president, touting that to be used by everybody. So I think we have to see clinical trials. I would love to see that. before I would prescribe it, in terms of treating with somebody with COVID.
That was the reason of my question.
Can we move to other questions?
Yes,
because we have other questions for Professor Agarwal from Professor Hayam Al-Agan asking about the fate of the clinical trials for implantable bioartificial kidney. We last year we got Dr. William Faissal visiting our Egyptian Society of Nephrology Congress and giving a very nice talk about the steps of bioartificial kidney. So how far they are now in reaching clinical trial for patients regarding this?
So that's a great question. They are one of the 6 recipients of the phase 2 redesigned dialysis Kidney X prize that they just got in July. They're making great progress. They're not ready yet for clinical trials. These things take time because you have to meet requirements of the FDA and so on before you can go into clinical trials. But they're making great progress. There will be a presentation, I think, at Kidney Week during ASN in October on their progress. So they're not in clinical trials as yet.
I have another question from Dr. Ibrahim Sayegh regarding how you are making this the telehealth practice, improving the care and the patient experience. Are they happy of not seeing the patient, the doctors face to face? I mean, are they happy by being treated by telemedicine only?
Absolutely. In fact, one of my faculty members in nephrology is the director for telehealth for our health system. He's done such a good job for nephrology that they've tapped him for the health system. And we monitor our patient satisfaction, with telemedicine, whether it's telephone or televideo. Most of them are televideo visits, and they've actually been very well. We just completed 200,000 televisits in the last 6 months during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is not just for nephrology, but this is for the whole health system. About 40% of all our nephrology visits right now, not only dialysis unit, but also clinic visits, are being done by telemedicine. And the patients actually love it. They don't want to come to the hospital because they're worried that they may get exposed to COVID. So they can sit in their, living room in their house and have a consult. We get them to a lab close by to the house, and they can share their lab results by, taking a picture and texting it to us so we can review their labs and so on. So it has actually worked very well. And, the nice thing is the reimbursement is the same as an in-person visit. And you don't have to pay rent for a big hospital building, a clinic room, and have a nurse and, an office, to receive the patient and so on. So all the overhead is significantly lower compared to, an in-person visit. Some patients you have to do in person, if they're CKD5 and close to needing dialysis. So some of them you have to do in person. So with the nephrologists make a judgment whether, and the patient, choice as well, if they want to do an in-person visit or a televisit, and that's how we do it. It has worked really well.
Dr. May, my co-chair, would you like to ask some questions to Professor Agarwal?
Unmute yourself, Dr. May.
Yes, of course, we can see that we really, if you want to do anything, you have to believe in your goal, to have a belief in your goal, and you have to be so much dedicated. I think our problem is how to approach the different the policymakers and other fragments in the society to talk to them and convince them and try to get them to help us in what we're doing. I think this is a very important step we have to take. I hope we do that. We are trying, but we haven't achieved what we really wanted to do, but we're trying. So I hope this we can have experience from you and do something in the future.
No, absolutely. The importance of policy and advocacy is so critical for a society. And our group has several people that only do policy and advocacy and work very closely with the federal government, with the various committees, within Congress and so on, because we have to constantly educate them, make sure what is a priority and so on. And actually they appreciate that feedback. And that's how we work together with them. And it's been hugely important for our patients and for our, healthcare professionals taking care of patients with kidney disease. So.
Do you have another comment, Dr. May? Unmute yourself, please. Do you have further comments? Okay.
I think, yes, I think somebody has to be dedicated for this particular mission to,
Yes.
It's very important that we cooperate together because you have the same goal. So it cannot go by everyone working on his own. There has to be this kind of collaboration. Yes.
Absolutely. I have a question here from Dr. Ahmed Kamal about telemedicine for transplant patients. It has been really helpful in transplant patients because, as you know, they're immunocompromised. So they're really worried about coming into the hospital, although the hospital is probably the safest place if you have COVID, because at least you know who has COVID, who doesn't have COVID, compared to if you go to the market or to the grocery store or someplace or a gym where you don't know who has and who doesn't have COVID. So we are doing almost half of the patients by telemedicine in terms of taking care of post-transplant follow-up. You just have to monitor the medication, cyclosporin or whatever, tacrolimus or their creatinine or their lipids and so on, so they can get that done locally where they live. We do about 300 kidney transplants a year. For about 3-4 weeks, our transplants were down, in April, but we quickly came back. And for the first time in about 15 years, we have now exceeded 300 kidney transplants this year at our center, despite COVID. So that should tell you how we've been able to continue doing that. Everybody gets tested 24 hours before the admission. That's more to realize how much PPE we need. So if somebody's positive, then we can be careful and so on. So, but it has worked really well.
Thank you, Ahmed. Yes, thank you, Ahmed, for your collaboration to make this meeting a reality. I'd like to thank you, and I appreciated your efforts, Dr. Ahmed, and I mentioned this in the introduction. Professor Faissal Shaheen.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Professor Agarwal. This is excellent talk and excellent strategy. I have 2 comments, if you allow me. The first regarding telemedicine. I agree with you. We practice this fully in my hospital, and we by telephone or virtual interview with the patient. For sure, there is some patient who they should go to emergency where they can be treated, but we are delivering the medicine to them. We are sending people to take blood test from home. So there is no need for the patient to come to the hospital at all. We practice this, and it's, as you mentioned, it is excellent. It is very, very good, but sometimes you are obliged to tell the patient to come to the hospital. Otherwise, no need for those patients to come to the hospital. So I agree with you about this. The other things which I want to ask you, you have non-insured patient on dialysis. How you are dealing with such patient, because probably we have almost the same problem in all the Middle East, that so many people are poor, they are not insured from the government because they are probably foreigner in some other place, and they are not covered.
That is a huge problem in the US, particularly in the southern states, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and so on, Arizona, New Mexico, where there are a lot of undocumented immigrants. And as you know, if they are of Hispanic origin, they have high incidence of kidney failure, and they have no care, they have no insurance, and they show up in the emergency room. And we have a rule that if any patient shows up in the emergency room, we have to provide emergency treatment. So that's emergency dialysis, and we bear the cost. So our hospital provides over $100 million per year of indigent care, which is for people that are not insured. And I would think about 1/3 or 1/5 of that is for undocumented immigrants, that have no legal, green card and so on. So we have made an arrangement with DaVita, which is our dialysis organization, and the hospital pays for those patients. So they have a chair, so they don't come to the ER or the emergency room every time they need to be dialyzed in fluid overload or severe acidosis or hyperkalemia once a week or twice a week, and they may die. So we owe those people, basic needs of healthcare. So we made an arrangement with our dialysis unit that we would have 10 chairs just for these patients, and the hospital pays them what they would get paid by dialyzing an insured patient. So that has helped us. So
I think it is very clear, and probably it is a lesson also for us to implement it in some area, that either DaVita or Davera can take a percentage of their chair to give into such poor patient for a non-insured patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Faisal. I would like to have comments from Professor Yasser Abdelhamid, because he raised the hand since a long time. Dr. Yasser, unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you,
Yes.
Professor Agarwal, for your. Thank you for this very comprehensive talk and for impressive informations. I have two branches question actually about if there is any change in transplantation care apart from telemedicine in COVID era in USA. And my second change is about the change in immunization program for dialysis and transplant patients. For example, for influenza vaccine or something like this, obligation for these patients in USA, if there is any.
Thank you, Dr.
No,
Yasser.
we have no change. We are following the same protocol. We have started new transplant programs for Hep C patients. And because of the new drugs available for hepatitis C, and just my center has done 39 transplants in the last 9 months alone of Hep C to Hep C. So that has been really tremendous for us. But essentially, we follow the same protocol in terms of influenza vaccination, immunosuppression, all the same, even with COVID or without COVID. So no changes, at least for transplant purposes.
If you allow me, Professor Agrawal, regarding the effect of COVID on the rate of renal biopsies in the era of COVID, do you do the same rate of renal biopsy as before COVID era?
So for transplant, we would do protocol biopsies. And initially with COVID, we had stopped doing it just out of precaution because we didn't know what was happening. But very quickly, so, COVID, hit US end of February, early March. So March, April, almost no biopsies. But then, May, June, we have now gone back to normal levels, even though we have 35 to 40,000 new cases of COVID in the US per day, even today. So just 2 days ago, it was 51,000 new cases in one day.
Okay.
So we are back to doing normal biopsies now.
And for the clinical nephrology outside transplantation. So in
yes,
acute
even
kidney
for
injury,
clinical nephrology,
the
we
same.
are doing biopsies. We do, if somebody has ANCA or, HUS TTP or, nephrotic syndrome, unknown AKI, we are doing biopsies normally now.
Are you brave enough to do biopsy for COVID patients, or you are reluctant to do biopsy for these patients, COVID and having problems in the kidney?
Yeah, so I was on service in June, and I had a patient who had COVID and had 13 grams of proteinuria.
Yes.
And his creatinine was up to 4. So he probably had some sort of a collapsing, they call it COVAN, right? Just like HIVAN. But, we were nervous to do the biopsy. So actually this is in April, not in June. This is still early in June, in April, that, we just said, what can we do? We cannot offer any treatment besides remdesivir and maybe an ACE and an ARB to reduce the proteinuria. His creatinine went up to 3, and then with time, as his COVID, resolved, his proteinuria dropped to less than 0.5 gram, and his creatinine came down to 1. I regret it now. I said, I wish I had done the biopsy that time, but we didn't do the biopsy because we were worried about exposing, everybody to COVID. But he had, severe FSGS, but it resolved. So one of my fellows is writing that up as a case report. So And similar cases have come out from New York and so on.
Okay, does COVID affect your choice for immune suppression in treating clinical nephrology in general, or away from transplantation?
So you know, most people have defaulted to maybe reducing immunosuppression to some extent. I don't know how it has been in Egypt, but to be honest with you, we didn't see a lot of dialysis patients or transplant patients with COVID. So something we are doing is protecting them from, we thought, you know, we would get hammered in our dialysis units in the US and our transplant patients, but it was not too bad. We have 700 dialysis patients. At the highest peak, we had 16 patients with COVID because we have a COVID dialysis unit we made especially for COVID, and it was never full. So I don't know what the reason is, but it wasn't. So we've not changed the immunosuppressive protocol, you know, per se for a COVID patient, but we didn't see that many patients either. And this has been the, you know, what throughout the US. I don't know how, if you all saw a lot of COVID in transplant and dialysis patients.
I think in COVID era, every day is making a difference. To the extent this day today, we have a case. This was a transplant candidate who just recovered from COVID-19 with bad pneumonia since a couple of weeks. So my question to you, because this was very interesting case, and even we consulted some experts in US and UK. He went to do transplant for a case who recovered just from COVID. Is there any period to be to leave the patient for a couple of 2 weeks, 4 weeks? Because we didn't know from the literature. But this day, today, I read a letter from Transplant International advising to keep 4 weeks between COVID, because I would like to hear from you. If you have a case, transplant candidate, he went to decide to proceed for transplantation after recovery from COVID pneumonia.
Yeah, I would wait, you know, if somebody has active lung disease, you know, I would definitely wait till they recover from that, you know, before you can do a kidney transplantation, particularly if you have a living donor. You don't want to risk it because it's a major surgery with anesthesia and so on. You don't want them to die of, you know, ARDS or something in the post-op. So I would definitely wait till the patient recovers, you know,
this is my question.
Kidney transplant.
The patient is recovered from pneumonia. CT now is clear, free, full recovery,
Yeah.
and the PCR is negative. Do you like to leave him for a couple of weeks, or you can go ahead for transplantation?
Yeah, if the patient is recovered, I would definitely go ahead with the transplant.
Without
you know, they are saying that with you know, COVID, you may have some long-term effects in the lung. One of my colleagues had COVID in March, and he had really bad lung infiltrates. And even till today, he cannot go up and down stairs because he gets short of breath. So his PFTs are showing diminished, you know, lung capacity. So there may be some, so I would at least get a PFT to make sure that their lung function is at least back up to 80%. So they may be physically seem okay, but I'd like to see their lung function tests so they at least have 80% back to normal, you know, before doing the transplant per se.
So this is your advice to do pulmonary function test for our case, and if CT is free and pulmonary function tests are okay, we'll go ahead for transplantation without delay?
I would think so.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. I would like to have the question Professor Said Khamis. Dr. Said? Yes.
Thank you, Professor, for this elegant presentation. I have two short questions, if you allow me. Number one, comparing the outcome of the dialysis patient in satellite centers run by some companies like DaVita and so, compared to the in-hospital centers, what is the state experience? Number one. Number two, I read some articles showing that the caring system in dialysis patient for dialysis patient and the short and long-term outcome of in dialysis patient in the States is inferior to Europe against my expectation. What is the reason for this? Thank you so much.
Yeah, those are great questions. You know, we have two large dialysis organizations in the US, as you know, DaVita and Fresenius, and there are several other smaller dialysis organizations. I don't think there is a huge difference in terms of survival or, the care and the quality. We have a system here, a star system, star rating, that takes into consideration multiple criteria, you know, how many have perm cats, how many started with the perm cat or a fistula or a graft, how many are on PD and so on. So based on the star rating, you know, cleanliness and staff ratio, technician ratio, how clean the unit is and so on. So there's a star rating and patients really look at that star rating. So if you are 4 stars out of 5 stars or 5 stars out of 5 stars, patients want to go to those units. And there's a big competition between Fresenius, DaVita, and some of the other dialysis companies to make sure that their star rating is high. So that really incentivizes them to make sure they deliver, you know, the best quality of care for the patients. Your second question is in terms of the survival rates. And I know, you know, Europe, in particularly France, the time on dialysis patients spend is a lot longer than the time our patients spend in the United States. And that's why maybe PD is better, because you have longer time, you know, to clean your blood, so to speak. In Europe, in France, there's a unit where patient comes at night and sleeps through the dialysis overnight. And they're on dialysis, you know, 6, 7, 8 hours. And we are gaining that. There are more and more patients in the US doing nocturnal dialysis, and they do really well compared to the ones that come 3 times a week for 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So I think a big issue is non-compliance. A lot of our patients are, underrepresented minorities. For them, they also have issues with social determinants of health in terms of their economic status. A lot of them don't even have a car that can drive them to and from a dialysis unit. So there are a lot of challenges here that impact, you know, dialysis is paid for. The government pays for dialysis. Once you get on dialysis, if you are a US citizen or a legitimate, you know, green card holder, it is paid for by the government. But what is not paid for is if the person gets food at home or has adequate nutrition and so on. So I think those social factors are a big problem in the US, and they continue to be a big problem in the southeastern United States, in particular in my state of Alabama, where some, you know, counties don't even have a nephrologist in their county. So it's difficult. You know, Birmingham is a big city, so we have, you know, all the facilities and so on, but otherwise it's difficult. So I think that is a strong underpinning, is I think time on dialysis, which is much higher in European centers compared to the US. And I think, you know, maybe more of them are on home therapies as well compared to the US. So I think those are just my general thoughts. So
does this mean, dear Professor Agarwal, that you don't like the policy or suggestion that was published in JSON about doing twice dialysis instead of 3 dialysis sessions per week for patients who are fitting for twice? Do you like? I would like to hear from you about this policy. Do you encourage or advocate reducing the frequency of dialysis? Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, if you reduce the frequency, you have to increase the time on dialysis, right? I recognize the paper you're talking about, and it's controversial. You know, before I came to the US 30 years ago, I used to practice in India where I trained. And in India, the patient paid for dialysis. And, you know, they could not afford 3 times a week. So we just did 2 times a week. So remember, you have end-stage kidney disease when your GFR drops below 15. And around 10 or so, you start dialysis. If you do dialysis 3 times a week, your GFR comes up to about 20, 22. It's still not good enough. And that's why the longer you are on dialysis, the more complications you have, whether it's cardiovascular, vascular, neurological, and so on. So even if you dialyze every day, maybe your clearance will come up to about 30 or so. I mean, even with the kidney transplant, 1 kidney, it's 50%, right? So I think we have to get people to as close to a normal GFR as possible. And I think 2 times a week is not adequate to get by. So
I think this is a wise approach. Now it is we are approaching 1 hour and 20 minutes. So in less than 10 minutes, we'll close the session. Professor Hany Hafez, I'd like to go back to Professor Hany.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting discussions. And I think we need to have you more and more time with us. So please accept our invitation for our Egyptian Society of Nephrology Congress, which is supposed to be the last week of February. We are hoping that by that time, the restriction of travel would have been decreased, and you will have the opportunity to visit the pyramids and the Nile. Please, and you will enrich us with your vast experience in nephrology. So this is an invitation for our Egyptian Society of Nephrology, and I hope you accept it.
I will be honored to do so. My Executive Vice President of ASN, that is Todd Ibrahim, he is originally of Egyptian descent, and he has never visited Egypt. His parents, his dad, I think, was from Egypt. So when I told him I was invited to give a talk, he said, "Oh my God, I wish we can go there. This will give me an opportunity to visit."
So we can make it. We can make our congress in conjoint with the ASN, and both of you can come.
Yeah, no, it'll be terrific. So we would love to do highlights. You know, ASN does highlights.
ASN highlights. Yes. It would be very interesting.
Germany, in Brazil, we do it in China, we do it in Japan, we do it in India. We would love to do that. And we would be honored to partner with you. If there are other things you think we can collaborate on, please send me a list of things, and happy to coordinate a phone call with your leaders, with you all, to see how we can work together, you know, as a team. And if we collaborate, we can all do better for our patients to improve kidney health.
Thank you very much. And also, you said that we can download the presentations, the webinars that you gave in the last period.
Yes.
For our colleagues in Egypt and in the Middle East and Africa, so they can get benefit of this big literature online.
Yes, so if you just Google ASN and COVID-19, it'll take you to a website with all the resources. All the recordings are available for everybody, anybody to use. And I believe you're recording this presentation, so you can share this as well. Or I'm happy to send you the slides as well.
Thank you very much, Professor Agrawal. If you allow me, Professor Hany, and I would like to take the opportunity to invite Professor Agrawal with us to speak about his area of expertise, which is acute kidney injury. I'm eager to hear from you. All progress done in the last 10 years in the field of research in acute kidney injury and the clinical trials and basic research. So if you agree about this point, it will be very great for us to enhance our education about one of the very important syndromes, which is associated with high mortality, acute kidney injury. Because I admire your research.
I'd like to do it. I actually have a talk on what is new in acute kidney injury, and I would love to do that anytime.
Okay, so we can organize with Your Excellency about this topic, and to select the date which is suitable and convenient for your agenda. Dr. Hany, I'm sorry for interrupting your thoughts.
No, Dr. Hussein, this is it will be a very good opportunity, because this era is moving very rapidly. And also, if you know that some of our European colleagues are making research about agricultural toxin and their effect on acute kidney injury, especially in our areas in the Middle East and Africa. So I think this also is a very hot topic nowadays.
Okay.
Definitely.
Professor May, I invited both the current president, Professor Hany Hafez, and the president-elect. And this is for the first time in Egypt to have a female doctor, female professor, to be the president of ESNT. So this is advantage of the ESNT that we have a woman who wrote, directed the society for the coming 3 years. Professor May.
Great.
And I think this will be a good opportunity to continue collaboration with the American Society of Nephrology. Yes.
And to include more women. Yes.
Yeah.
No, in the next election. The
next 3 presidents of ESN will be women.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Agarwal, for enlightening us. And yes, we will be waiting for you in Egypt. And one of the very true things you mentioned is that it's the patient. The patient will convey his voice more than anybody else. This is very true. And yes, we have to go through this path. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor May. And I would like to thank and appreciate the change done in the JSON and the CJSON, because I follow them. I didn't prepare any presentation without looking at CJSON and the JSON and the nowadays Kidney 360. And I think 20% or 25% from my slides are from these resources. They are very interesting resources. And I like the sector you added to the CJSON and the JSON, patients in wars or patient perspectives about everything, because patients' perspectives are delighting and carries a very interesting points to be taught and conducted for our community. So appreciation, and I think JSON and the CJSON, and I think JSON will have its value again, because there was some drop in the last years, but I think it will be one of the prestigious and the top journal in the near future. I think we learned a lot from the presence of Professor Agarwal, and we are continuing to start the journey of collaboration, and it is the beginning of the collaboration. And I think in the near future, we will learn a lot and to have the benefit from dealing with well-developed society. I considered ASN and ISN are the top societies in the field of nephrology. Always I learn from you and from my professors in the United States. So to close this session, I'm going just in 2 minutes to close the session, because we agreed about one hour and a half, and I have 2 minutes to stop. So even if we cannot achieve this goal, world without kidney disease, at least as we learned today from Professor Agarwal, to have the patient at ease, comfortable, living well with kidney diseases. And this is the goal of 2021 World Kidney Day. I think we should do our best for the welfare of our patients. If we succeed to prevent kidney disease, this will be a fantastic goal for nephrologists. And I myself, I am working in a renal transplant center, but I consider preventing 1 case from end-stage kidney disease is more superior and more beneficial to the community than doing 10 transplant cases. So prevention. And one of our humble style is to do educate. And this is our virtual academy. And this is the number of lectures that we had, 4,660 lectures, and all these from 2012, so 8 years. And we exceed 1,900 videos. And we changed our virtual academy from just a channel for Arabic to continue to include Arabic and English, because we are moving toward international sistership with all societies. So we have Arabic versions from presentation to improve ourselves and to be enjoined with other society. In the era of COVID, this is the number of in all countries, they used our site. We had 28,000 users from all over the world. And I'm going to send you, Professor Agarwal, user and password for the presentations. And the YouTube video is free for public, and your video will be uploaded tomorrow morning. And from the board of Egyptian Society of Nephrology and Transplantation, this is the board. As you see, all the board are men, except Professor Maya Hasaballa, and this is the secretary and not within the board. So the Professor May is the only female, and we hope that in the next generation we have a lot of bionic women because they had the power to make change. Would you please accept this symbol from the ESNT CME, that a symbol of appreciation for your presence and for enriching our Zoom meetings, and we hope to meet you in the near future. I would like to stop here, leaving the mic for you, Professor Agrawal, to close this session.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had a great time participating in your meeting and really learning from you all. A great discussion session. I'd love to collaborate and work closely with the Egyptian Society of Nephrology. Anything we can do together, we are better as one society alone. I think clearly, Dr. May, you need to make sure that you enforce action, that you can have more women on your society leadership as well. I'm sure you can do that. It took a while for ASN to do, but we are thrilled now to have 3 ASN presidents starting next year will be women, Dr. Quaggan, Dr. Murphy, and Dr. Michelle Josephson. So we are very proud, in terms of what our efforts at diversity and inclusiveness has been. So, but thank you again. I had a really great time. I appreciate it. You all have a good night. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you and goodbye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.